Good morning, everyone. We're going to make a start in a moment. There are a few seats at the front for those who may be in the back. If you'd like to have a seat a bit closer, you can. There are some seats up here that you can come and sit in. We're going to start in a few seconds.
Thank you. Yep, the guys at the back, do you want to come? There's 2 or 3 seats here and a couple more in the row behind. So if you want to come and grab them, then we can get started. Do come and sit, that's great. Okay, good morning, everybody. And I want to start by just reiterating what I said last night, which is a huge welcome back to you all. It's fantastic you're here. Thank you. And it's great to see so many of you. It's great to see so many of you, and I know so many of you who've flown from so far make this journey and be here today despite COVID, despite everything, you're here. So I really hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's especially poignant, I think, that first years and second years are also here together. And it's particularly special for the class of 1991, of course, because you've got both. Yeah. And that... we had our 40th reunion 2 weekends ago, and I'm from the class of 81, so I know how that feels, and it's just surreally amazing. So I want everyone to really enjoy. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate old friends. Let's celebrate being back on campus. Let's celebrate this amazing castle, and let's just have a really great time. I also want to welcome those of you who couldn't be here but are watching this online. So it's a shame you're not with us here in person, but you're here in spirit. And also this afternoon, we're going to pay tribute to those who are no longer with us. And I would encourage you to come to commemorate their lives. Particularly this afternoon, we're going to plant a tree for Colin Jenkins, who I know was loved by us all. And Izzo is coming, and I know it's Robin's reunion. I don't know if Robin's in the room, but Izzo and Robin are going to plant a tree in memory of Colin this afternoon. I also want to welcome the class of 20 and 21. I don't think any of them are in the room. Yes, you're in the room. Fantastic. Thank you for coming. I want to explain why they're here. If you run the video back to March 2020, COVID had just really started to take off. And the UK government shut all schools. So within 4 days, every single student here had to go home at the end of March, and they didn't come back. They didn't have a graduation, they didn't get a chance to say goodbye, nothing. So we decided, Nahid decided, that it would be very poignant, quite exceptional, but very poignant to invite them back this weekend for the class of 2020. And the class of 2021, they went through quite a journey with COVID as well. So again, we just thought it would be a nice thing to do. They're all out having a great time around campus and enjoying themselves, but it was an exceptional thing for us and something we wanted to do. So as I say, I hope you find the weekend poignant. I also hope you find it memorable and fun, and I know you will find it fun, but I also hope you leave feeling inspired and excited by what we're doing on campus. I introduced myself last night to most of you, but I'm Jill from Jersey in the Channel Islands. I won a scholarship to come here from 1979 to 81. It completely transformed my life, like I know it did for most of you, and so I decided I wanted to give back, and I've been chair of the UWC Atlantic Board for the last 2 years. I also want to welcome Nahid, who's our wonderful principal who'll be speaking later, Ria as our Director of Finance, and Andrea, who's our Director of Philanthropy. We're all going to be saying a few words this morning before we move on to questions and answers. What I want to say is we are all here because we care. We care for each other, we care for the college, and we care for the mission. And I'm confident in saying, having just been to the graduation, the students of today are phenomenal. They are amazing. They're resilient, they're compassionate, they're excited and idealistic, and they're fun. They are, you guys, 30 years on, the same. The same. And it was that whole experience that made it for us, wasn't it? It was so special. And it was that hugely diverse student body that made it particularly special for us, underpinned by the scholarship provision. We came here, we were young, but we grew together. We supported each other. We learned from each other. We did great things together. Some of us even fell in love and maybe got married and had kids together. I know that was the case in my year. But it was a really strong 2 years that we had together and had a major, major impact on our lives. And of course, when you guys were here for your 30th, you probably had 5 or 6 other UWCs. We now have 17 others across the movement. And that really increases our reach and our impact and our message of UWC. And let's not forget the mission here. UWC makes education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. It's needed more now than ever before. And you'll be back again. I can vouch for that. You'll come back again, maybe a bit grayer, a few more wrinkles, but you will be back for your 40th, and you'll also be back for your 50th. And we stayed up partying till 3 o'clock, I think. I know you guys stayed up a lot longer because you're 10 years younger, but I challenge you when you come for your 40th and your 50th to keep going as long as you can during the night. And I can assure you the college will be in a really good place. Much is being done. The role of the board is very simple. We guard the mission, we have legal and fiducial responsibility, we help shape the strategy, but the most important thing we do is hire the head. And in September 2020, Peter Howe, the then incumbent head, resigned, and we set up a task force to go about searching worldwide for our new head. And we went out through a headhunting company, a global one. 100 applications came through, and thank goodness, Nahid found us, and we found Nahid. He gets UWC through and through, and he gets what needs to be done. He's passionate, he's focused, he's organized, and boy, a real joy to work with. In the last 12 months, he hit the ground running. He will explain now the work that he's been doing with his team here. We are working on an educational vision for the future, and some of you in the room, Guido particularly, has been involved with helping shape that. That is super exciting, and he's going to explain about that. We're revolutionizing education again. We've got a great relationship, thanks to Nahid, with the IB at the most senior level, so they're on board with this. He's led on a strategic plan, which I know he's going to mention, and he's appointed some very exciting new members of our leadership team. We're developing a sustainable capital plan for the campus, and we've done a survey of the castle, which I know Nahid will talk about. Importantly, we've built really good relationships between the board and the leadership team. The board is much more open and engaged now than it ever has been. We've got more diversity on the board, more enthusiasm, more interest, and we work very hard and very closely with the leadership team. And the other thing I want to reiterate is we're building a better, solid base of rapport with UWC internationally. And I want to thank everybody who has been or is involved with national committees, because you guys are fabulous. And I've met some of you already from Sweden, from Norway, from various others. Can you just put your hands up if you're involved or have been involved in the last few years? Massive thank you to you. It is a wonderful job and role that you play as volunteers, selecting these incredible students. Let there be no doubt UWC Atlantic wants to be at the heart of the UWC movement. That is very exciting and important to us. So much has changed, much has improved. The college is in good hands. We're coming out from COVID, which has been a challenging time, but we're in a really good place now. And I want to say to you all, please participate. Please join us on this journey. Both today, when we've got some really important impact hubs that we're going to be talking about, but also going forward. Please get involved, support us, challenge us, represent us, promote us. But please join us on this journey. We are one big family, and with you by our side and helping us, we can really, really make the impact that we want to. So thank you again for coming, and I'm going to pass you over to Naheed. Thanks a lot.
Morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Jill, for that very warm welcome. It's been a tremendous pleasure to be able to be here the last year and to be able to work with our board and with our staff and with our community. Had the chance to meet many, many alumni now. We recently did our first trip out in May to the U.S., to New York and San Francisco, and met around 60 alumni when we were there, and just a tremendous, tremendous pleasure to be part of this really magnificent community. I want to first say Eid Mubarak to everyone, and to those particularly who are celebrating today. And a small shout out to the intergenerationalness of the community here. And so I found out that there's actually Pervez from the class of 91 and her daughter Ruby from the class of 2021 who are here. So I guess every 10 years the two of them will be coming back here for reunions, right? Is there anybody else in the same situation? Is there anyone from the class of 90 and 2000 or 2020, 2021? Excellent. And who is your parent? Class of 19. You're from the class of 2020? 21. Excellent, excellent. So two in the room. Wonderful, wonderful. And really just speaks to the testament and strength of the community. As I say, is that we cannot separate the present from the past or from the future. If you are a community and one that is long-standing and intergenerational, then we cannot divorce those things from each other. And that's why this means so much to me that all of you are here. This is my starting point. This is my family. So my partner, my wife Edwina, and my two kids, Rainan and Nabi. And we've had a tremendous, tremendous year settling in here. And if I could summarize how my year went in sort of one sentence, it would be that I can't think of a better place for my children to grow up than in this community. And so for me, that's the most important thing. And I share this because I believe that education is the most deep of human endeavors. And so therefore, as a principal, as a teacher in a school, you cannot divorce your sort of professional life and persona from who you are. You bring all of what you bring, all of your values, all of your past experiences, all of your family lives. You bring all of that to your work when you work with young people. And you can't really separate those things. And so to know me better as a principal, you have to, in some small way, at least know me as a person. And so I start with my family. For me, very briefly, my sort of journey, you could say, and again, it's important for me, about me. And so my parents were born in East Africa, my grandparents in India, and they moved to East Africa and then to Canada, where I was then born, and so part of that sort of colonial project that ended up in Canada, and then sort of full circle back in the UK again. So that's kind of nice, right? Sort of. And so, for me, that's an important part of my own story and my own sort of family history. And in Canada, my dad was an entrepreneur in the early 80s, and he started his own software writing company. And so for me, aspiring in some ways to be like him. So I did a degree, my first degree in university was in sort of computer science and in business. And had a small stint in management consulting for a short period of time, and as a marketing manager at a startup as well. But soon had the chance to travel the world a little bit, and decided that it wasn't going to be through business that I wanted to have an impact on the world, that it was through education. That it was through helping young people to make better decisions for themselves and for their families and for their communities was the best way in which that I could give in a small way. So I had the chance then to go to Mombasa, Kenya, where I worked in a school there. That was a full IB school and residential for 10 years. Ended there as principal of the high school and diploma program coordinator there. Then went back to Canada, to Toronto, to a school there with then at that time now my wife. To settle with my parents who also live there, and I didn't want to be the kind of son who only came back to see their parents when they weren't doing well. You know, fortunately, my parents are still healthy, and I wanted to spend some time with them, and of course, get Edwina's citizenship and start a family and all those kinds of things. And when the opportunity came up here, I couldn't resist. I've known about UWC for a long time. My mom, when I was in high school, asked me if I wanted to apply to Pearson when I was 16, and I said, "Do I have to do French again?" And they said yes, and I said, "I'm not going." The decisions a 16-year-old makes, right, in their mind, like it's bizarre, right? But it happens. And so always known about UWC, and it was just a real honor and pleasure to be able to come here and be part of this community. As Jill has said, we've been really busy and had a really interesting COVID year, and this was probably the best COVID activity that we could do, the 24-hour race. And I think in 2021 is when it started, right? With that class, and so continued on with this past academic year. And this is just a small, picture from there. Some of the other activities, of course, happening around campus this year, and some tremendous celebratory moments for us, despite some of the hardships around COVID. Camp got started back up again after a number of years, so that happened in May. Diwali celebrations not too long ago. We had a couple of students, one of them who would have been in the class of 2021, the second from the right, and the one who's second from the left, Abu. He's really in many ways the person who spearheaded it this year. He's a refugee from Afghanistan who went to Belgium and then came from Belgium to the college here, and was really, for this year at least, sort of the force behind this app. And what they were doing was designing an app for refugees, designed by refugees to help learn language in their new country of settlement. And so it's really designed with that eye and makes it quite different from the sort of cookie cutter language apps that exist. And so they've done a tremendous job, and they're working with some AI right now, an example of the kind of way in which they harnessed our community. What they found was that most AI working in languages like French, for example, they only really pick up would be sort of a traditional French accent. When of course we know in the world there are hundreds of French accents, right? And so our community in many ways encapsulates much of that diversity. So they were using our community and UWC more broadly to get as many different French accents as possible to help train the app to be able to pick up different than versions of French in that kind of way. So an example in the ways in which they were using tremendous technology, harnessing the power of our diversity of our community to then create this app, which has then been shortlisted for an MIT prize. So really exciting work that's taking place here. Jill mentioned a bit about the strategy, and so what we've been working on for the bulk of this year is a bit about this. One of the first problems that was sort of put into my lap by our governors, which is a tremendous problem to work on, was to think about, what is our, sort of unique value proposition in some way? What is it that really will distinguish us, or what are we really about? What are we trying to do? And why should we exist for the next 10 years? Fundamentally. So we've been working a bit on that, and I'll share a bit about that in a moment. And then below that is some of the strategy work that we've been engaged in. We started off with what we would call sort of the scan phase, which was a more typical type of SWOT analysis of our broader community to understand what is surfacing there. We then took many of the themes that emerged from there and created sort of discovery teams. That's the next layer you see on the slide there. And so we had 50 students and 30 staff that volunteered to give their time to create these discovery teams based on 7 themes, including things like educational innovation, well-being, philanthropy, outdoor education, sustainability, these types of things. And from there, they went out and researched what was happening in the world as good practice that they could bring back to the leadership team and share with us to help to accelerate our strategic planning process. And that was then the develop phase, which we just finished, and then we're in the sort of feedback timeframe now. And that's around really trying to get your thoughts and your input as to what it is that we've developed. So later on today, there's a session that I'm running on strategy, and if you'd like to know more, you can come to that session. And we're hoping to deliver the outcomes of that at the end of the summer. These slides are just for impression, okay? So don't worry about the detail, but I think it's important to understand the way in which we're thinking about the problems that we're trying to solve. So this is population growth over time, urban and rural populations over time, global meat production over time and by region, the Living Planet Index is measured in 1970 at 100% of 21,000 species and looks at the decline, effectively, of living species, and 2016 is the latest marker there. Annual CO2 emissions over time. Global plastic production over time. Registered mobile money accounts over time and by region. This is a chart about natural language processing in artificial intelligence. And so Squad 1.1, the green line, the test for that was a typical kind of SAT sort of passage with multiple choice questions. And in 2018, the AI could read the text and answer multiple choice questions better than human beings could at that stage. And Squad 2.0 takes the exact same exercise, but in the multiple choice questions, there sometimes was no correct answer. And so the AI could look at the responses and say, there is no right answer here, I'm not going to respond. Okay? So imagine what the implications are of that for education. There is AI today that can write your extended essay for you, right? So what does that mean about the way in which we think about education? So my basic premise is that the rate of change in the world drastically outpaces the rate of change in education. And indeed, for those in the class of 1990, education has only changed in the margins since the time when you went to school. And indeed, I could say the same thing to the class of 1970, right? Just at the margins. Maybe 10% has changed. 90% has remained essentially the same in the way in which we do what we do. And that's global. I'm not talking about Atlantic College necessarily, right? Arguably, I could show you 50 more charts like the ones I just showed that talk about essentially exponential change in the world around us. And these are just symptoms, right, that are popping up. But when the rate of change of education is so slow in comparison to the world around us, where does that leave us when we talk about the emerging and drastic challenges that the current cohort of students have to face, let alone today, but 15 years from now? What does it mean for the preparation that they are receiving to be able to handle those real changes and the real emergencies that are in our world? Are they appropriately equipped? Are we appropriately equipped? The answer can only be no, because we're the ones who've caused the damage in the world in the first place, right? So we're obviously not equipped, right? But can they be equipped, at least? And if education is not the answer to help us to get there, then what is, right? And so if we are not going to be at the forefront of helping to think about that, then who is? And so we have to have the courage, I would say the moral obligation, to be pursuing and thinking about these types of problems. And so to get then to what the purpose is of what we're trying to do, the why, okay? So if we imagine from a UWC standpoint, both at Atlantic and movement-wide, 3 fundamental pillars: peace, sustainability, and experiential learning, the Kurt Hahn sort of side of things, if you will. And oftentimes, all of our schools have really tremendous programming in these areas, but they're often done in silos. So what would happen if we thought about it like this instead? And what would a program look like that emerged from the center point of that? And for me, the truism there is the overlap first between peace and sustainability. And I think we have just an underdeveloped idea of peace in my mind. Okay, when I hear the narrative of peace, we often talk about global peace, right? And that's okay. But that actually isn't the guts of what peace is, right? For me, the way that we're interpreting peace is our unequal, unfair, unjust human systems, okay, that we create and we perpetuate. Okay? And sustainability is our fragile natural systems. And so then it's the overlap, the intersection point, which for me is a deep truism, that we don't often help our students to understand deeply enough. There is no separation between us as human beings and the place and the environment in which we live in. We treat them as separate. Sometimes we have a very human-centric idea of the way that the world operates, but we know in reality that we are inextricably linked, and that complexity is what we want our students to begin to wrestle with. I would argue that we cannot solve any of our climate emergencies without at the same time understanding the deeply flawed human systems that sit beneath it, that perpetuate and cause our behaviors to happen a certain way, our consumption patterns to occur in a certain kind of way, the tensions that we then have. And when the environment then changes, so in turn, do our human systems. Our values shift, our behavior patterns shift, our tension over scarce resources shifts, our migratory patterns shift. All of those things come into question. And so really helping students to understand that complexity is what's, I think, so important. And then finally, experiential learning piece, we're taking that to be an action orientation. No longer is it good enough to theorize about it, or to read about it, or to debate it, or to model United Nations it, right? It's not good enough to simulate it, or to even prototype it. We actually have to be doing something about it. And that's complex, to teach students how to take action in what is often a contested space, because it is contested, right? The notion of social justice is contested, right? The ideas of unequalness, to some extent, is contested. We can just look at our Western societies. Most of them, in some ways, have become more divisive than they were 20 years ago. And so in contested spaces that are complex, how to take good, responsible action that doesn't reinforce silos, but helps to build bridges across multiple points of view, multiple political opinions, multiple systems. That is difficult work to do. But I would argue that's what we have to do. And so that kind of action is what we're looking for here. I'm also a sort of a structure-driven person. I know that ideas are great, but they need structures to land in and to sit on top of. And so what we're looking to do then is to create a center or an institute, as sort of a placeholder name for now, for systemic change and the UN SDGs. And so what we are really interested in here is systems change and helping students to be good, and this is hard, good at systems change, or understanding the systematic sort of causes of what then happens to be sort of the symptoms or events that we see at the surface. And the SDGs are important because it plugs us into a global conversation. That's what's important there, that we are part of a global agenda that's helping to move in some way the world forward. And for it to be sort of a research, content development, impact-oriented sort of institute that helps to research what we are doing, but at the same time build pedigree, build expertise in this particular intersection space, so we can help to share that with people around the world. The more students that are able to understand this, the better off the world is going to be. And every student in the world is our student. There's no such thing as proprietary when it comes to helping to make the world a better place. And so we want to share as much and whatever we can. And so you'll see the new educational pathway, which then is another structure that will be the embodiment of that sort of Venn diagram that I displayed, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but also to act as a uniting factor around the really other interesting things that we do that's in green around it. And so a few things I'll speak about next, and the first is the educational pathway, and then a few other things that will be able to enable us to then achieve what that purpose is. So, the new educational pathway that we are currently dreaming up, okay, and working on. We had a sort of prototyping workshop on March the 7th, which was really great. We had a number of alumni who were there, a number of people from various industries and sectors, LSE professor, McKinsey Partners, CEO of fintech banks. We had several governors there, teachers there, students there to help to work together to be able to build this prototype. We had the sort of number 2 person in the IB, who's the chief academic officer at the IB, was also present, so working in conjunction with them around this sort of project of ours, because from the very beginning, even though the Director General of the IB is new and I am new, we sat together and spoke and said, our institutions have been linked from the beginning, so how do we go about doing this together? Okay, and that was sort of the motivation. So we're looking at a pilot in 2023 for 20 students, okay, 20 of the 190 we're going to have at that stage, right? So we're talking about a relatively small number to start the pilot with. But they'll be taking 4 IB subjects, and we will then take 2 courses worth, so about 400 hours of time, to create this new program that's going to be based on the Venn diagram. That's the why, right? That's what we're striving towards. But then the program itself will be deeply about the purpose. It'll be heavily embedded in systems thinking, systems design, design thinking, and be heavily action-oriented. So that's just in a very nutshell what it is that we're going to be working towards. But of course, there's much more to that I can explain later if there's interest. Thank you. So as part of that then, you need to have the team that's going to be able to deliver and enable that to happen. And so part of what we've been working on this year is assembling the right team in the right places to be able to enable that action to happen. And really excited about the team that we have managed to put together to help to lead us forward. And you're going to be hearing from a couple of them later on. But also just want to mention David, who's here. If you don't mind giving me a quick wave, David, that'd be great. David is our new Director of Operations and Sustainability, who has just joined us very recently. And we have someone else in the audience too, who is going to be assuming our position of VP of Student Life. Lucretia from the class of 92. Stand up. Stand up, Lucretia. Stand up, stand up. So Lucretia is from the class of 92 and has had a career in education and has been a head of school and a deputy head of school, and most recently was a social worker. And so, what better combination of skill set and experience than to have that. So such a privilege to be able to have that kind of connection to our past, but also to our present and to our future here with us at the college. So just to say, a really important piece of the puzzle to enable the ambition that we have going forward. We also need the appropriate space. I'm sure most of you now have had a chance to walk past and reminisce past the buildings that you were in to study, right? It looks pretty much the same, doesn't it? Yeah. The class of 70 also felt it looked the same. Yeah? Okay, and so, while it is somewhat funny, it is actually not a great situation, right? Arguably for today's purposes, it's not fit for what we need, let alone for the vision that we have from a purpose standpoint. What we are looking to do, though, is maintain the outsides of the buildings because they're in good shape. It would be environmentally irresponsible and financially irresponsible of us to break down what are, good exteriors of buildings, right? So we will look to gut the inside and bring the outdoor space between the 3 buildings inside by putting, this is a rendering of what it could look like, of a sort of, roof over the top that was able to let in good light and take in that outside area in to give us a bit more classroom space for us to be able to use. So that's an exciting project that we are working towards. The second is our castle. It is the heartbeat in so many ways, and I would argue you cannot have UWC Atlantic without the castle. Okay? It is an enabler of so much of what we do here, both in spirit, but also in practicality. In some ways, the castle is in a little bit of trouble, right? It hasn't received significant renovation since Hearst's time. Okay? And so, unsurprisingly, our roofs are in a little bit of bad shape. How many of you have a part to play in that? Who walked on a roof? Who walked on a roof? Thank you very much. Thank you. It's okay. We'll be coming for you. Don't worry. Don't worry. 1,000 pounds a tile. Yeah. Okay. So we have 42 roofs. Of the 42, about 24 are in rough shape. Okay. Some of them are damp. So you can walk around the castle and you can look and you can see there's dampness in various parts, right? And indeed, in some cases, there's outright drips, like in my office. When it rains hard, actually, there's drips. So I have to put a bucket underneath to, seriously. And that comes from the top of the Lady Anne Tower. So there is no quick fix to it. But it's just to say that it is an area of significant need for us going forward. Student diversity. such an important part of what we have here. And this is where we are today, okay, this year. So on the socioeconomic side, what you can see is that 50% of students are full fee payers and 50% receive some sort of funding. It's the equivalent of 35% of our students receiving full funding. So 50% receive some funding, the equivalent of 35%. That's not good enough for us, okay? And the challenge is, as many of you will know, is that we receive no sources of government funding at all as a school. And that's very different to our past 30 years ago. Okay, 40 years ago, very different. When in Wales or in the UK, we had several government areas that were giving 2 scholarships even per year to us. Okay, and now we have 0. So the delta is effectively made up entirely by philanthropy, made up entirely by foundations who give, alumni who give, and parents who give. We have a small elemental sort of contribution from national committees and a small contribution from the international office as well. But those are still all philanthropy based, right? So our entire scholarship is 100% on scholarship funding through philanthropy. Okay, and so that's the material challenge. We don't have that demographic by choice per se, right? Like it's not by design, by strategy. It's there by practicality, okay, as to what it is. And there really is only one way to shift that. Okay, and so on the other side is our geographic sort of spread. You can see the representation that we have, and this is different from what it was, 30 years ago. Okay, it is more geographic diverse than it was 30 years ago. And strategically, we are looking to increase the number of students we have, in particular from South America, as well as from Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa in particular. Okay, so just that's an awareness for you, and if you may be thinking about contributions and supporting in that kind of way, that's the sort of region of the world that we would like to be focusing on. And finally, around financial sustainability. So you've heard a little bit about some of our needs, right? Increasing scholarship provision, the backlog of renovations that we have, capital projects, educational innovation. All those things are needs. And what has become clear to me and to others is that the number of students that we have here is simply not enough, spread across, to be able to support all of our needs that we have. We are in a healthy position from an annual basis. A profit and loss statement is healthy year on year. However, it doesn't come close to enabling us to do all the work that needs to be done on this campus. It doesn't even come close. So right now we're, this year, for example, we're turning about 150,000, okay, as a surplus. We're endeavoring to get that to 500,000. So we are able to, at the end of each year, be able to bank and build a surplus. So over the period of 5 years, we can bank 2.5 million, and that will allow us to begin to chip into some of the work that needs to be done. But as you see when Andrea shares, it still doesn't really come close. But so what we need to do is to improve our enrollment, or to increase it from 350 to 380. And just to be fully transparent here, it is 100% a financial decision. I would love to tell you it's a values-based, it's a mission-based. It's not. 100% a financial decision, okay, to do that. And that's going to enable us to be able to get to the 500,000 that we need to be able to begin chipping away at some of these really important projects that we have. So then I'm going to pass it over to Ria to speak a bit more about the finances.
Good morning, everybody. It's really lovely to have you all here. Welcome back, and I hope you're enjoying the weekend and this beautiful Welsh weather, which you've been really fortunate to be able to enjoy as well. I think I won't be familiar to many of you, if any of you at all. So I just wanted to share, to begin with, a little bit about my background and why I'm here at UWC Atlantic. So I've held various roles in finance across industry, some really motivating and kind of high-paced roles. And around about 18 months ago, I just had the opportunity to reflect, and I realised that what was missing in terms of my professional life was being able to apply my profession as an accountant in an organisation where I just felt much more mission aligned to and much more passionate about. So I took the deliberate move from industry into charity, and I'm incredibly fortunate because I honestly don't think that I could have found a better fit than here at Atlantic College. So I'm really proud to be here and really excited about delivering on our 10-year strategy. I think in terms of the finances, it really underpins our ability to deliver on our 10-year strategy and our vision. So it's really important as an enabler. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes today to talk to you about our financial plan for next year and how that fits into the wider piece around how we deliver on the strategy. So our plan for next year is that we're forecasting 13 million in income. We've got two income streams here at the college. Firstly, from the college fees, which is a culmination of both fee payers and that which comes through the various sources of philanthropy. But we've also got a commercial revenue stream, which is incredibly important in terms of financial sustainability, because you'll note from the pro forma that without this commercial income, our current surplus at the moment turns into a deficit, and we're incredibly fortunate to have this campus to be able to deliver that, not only in terms of commercial income, but in terms of outreach and engagement with our local community as well, who can then share in this incredible space. So one example is this month alone, we had a national television network filming in the castle, and that alone generated £20,000 of income, which, within context, is almost a third of a full scholarship for a year. So the commercial income stream becomes really critical. So 13 million of income, and then I just wanted to talk a little bit about our cost base, and I don't want to talk about it in terms of financial analysis or margin analysis or comparatives with other boarding colleges. I wanted to talk about our cost base specifically in terms of our decision making around where we spend our limited resources. So fundamentally, by being in the education sector, by its nature, staff costs are our biggest expenditure every year. But that's also fundamentally by design. And we've spent a lot of time looking at our offering in terms of attracting a really diverse and highly skilled staff base, because they really are the heart and soul in terms of what we deliver here at the college. So not only are we looking at that in terms of what we are able to provide in terms of salary, but also in terms of the wider benefits package and attractive relocation package to really make sure that we make our employee base as diverse as it possibly can be. Energy and maintenance, I just want to touch briefly on. So it costs almost £1.4 million a year to run this incredible campus in terms of energy and maintenance, and that's particularly important for us in the current climate. So energy costs are a real focus for us. So in terms of the 10-year strategy and the investment plan, what's fundamental for us is that we are able to invest in the campus in a way that it deserves and it really needs. And what that means is we move away from reactive maintenance, which we're currently in the cycle of, and we're able to invest in this castle in a way that it really, really deserves. And we're also putting a focus on making the campus as energy efficient and sustainable as possible. So really our aim is to get that 1.4 million either down or under control, given where we are in the global environment. And then lastly, in terms of costs, I just wanted to talk about catering. So we're planning to spend almost 1.2 million next year on catering. It's more than we've ever spent historically in comparison, and we've recognised that that's an area that's really fundamentally important to the student experience. I think food is so important. Funnily enough, we get that reaction every reunion. So we acknowledge possibly catering hasn't had the focus that it should have had historically. But our commitment is to really to really make food much more at the kind of the heart of the community. Obviously, it really makes students feel at home. It builds the community. It's a really social thing. So this August, we are partnering with a new catering provider who are really values aligned in terms of delivering high quality food, but in a sustainable way. So we're really excited to see what that looks like from September. We'll be seeking feedback. And then, so that leaves us next year with a projected surplus of 350,000. And as Nahid said, it's a great place to start. 350 essentially as a surplus is a great place to start. But in order for the surplus to deliver the proportion that it needs to for the 10-year investment and scholarship plan, that 350 really needs to be 500. And just to put that into some sort of context, 500 a year over 10 years is 5 million. Whereas the grand strategic plan probably needs in the region of 70 million in terms of investment. So it's still an important proportion of what it contributes. So in order to move from 350 to 500, as Nahid was saying, we need to increase the student population from our current 350 to 380, which probably doesn't seem like a huge progression from where we are at the moment. But in order to do that, we need to invest immediately in the sustainable refurbishment of Powys, which is happening now. The project started, so that's happening over the summer and into the autumn. So we'll end up with another really high quality and sustainable student accommodation by the end of next year. Other areas of finance that we're sort of looking to improve. So we invested in our systems, and that really enables us to just have much more timely and high quality management information available to us, which supports our decision making. So that's a project that's been going on this year. And we've also examined our existing financial model, and we recognise that it probably needs to evolve in line with the strategy. So looking at the financial model and evolving that is a piece of work that will also happen next year as well. And then areas of immediate investment which we have recognised while going through the strategic planning process is around people safeguarding and well-being. So over the summer, we are hoping to recruit some additional employees in order to support safeguarding and well-being. So we are looking to have a full-time psychologist, so an on-campus full-time psychologist. Yeah, it's really important. From this August, so we're really excited to be able to introduce that. Also, an additional qualified nurse, and we're going to bolster the support of the night staff supervision. So there are immediate areas of investment in preparation for the following year. So I hope that provided some context in terms of our sort of short-term one-year financial plan and how that feeds into the bigger strategy and where our real areas of focus are enabled to deliver on our 10-year plan. So thank you, and I'll now hand you over to Andrea, our Director of Philanthropy. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I introduced myself yesterday, but for those that couldn't make it to the receptions on time, and those joining us online because we're streaming this presentation for all the alumni that couldn't come today. My name is Andrea. I am Mexican and French. I learned French opposed to to what Nahid decided to do, and I've been living in London for 22 years, so I really feel at home here. I learned about UWC Atlantic very late in life. I wish I could have had the opportunity like you to come here to study, but I learned about it when I spoke with one of the trustees, and he encouraged me to join them. I really thought when I learned about the mission that it was really, really relevant today, as Jill said, more than ever. So I wanted to be part of this and help in this way. So I wanted to talk to you about the alumni network. We have an amazing alumni network. It's really, truly global and diverse, and we have more than 9,000 alumni making a difference, a real difference in different sectors of the economy. So this is extraordinary. The other thing is that when I joined, I realized that this community, this network, was only connected on the horizontal way. So you only know who is in your first year and who is in your second year, but you don't know people 10 years below you. So I thought that's something missing there. We need to do something to connect all this network across all these years. And older people with a lot of experience could help the younger ones and mentor them. So I decided when I joined to start building with my team a robust engagement program where you can give in different ways. So now you can give your time and talent as well and mentor alumni that are younger than you, get mentored, and also mentor students, yeah? So I think it was really, really important to do that. If you're interested in joining our program and to give back in that way, please send us an email in joinin@uwcatlantic.org. Don't worry about it. If you don't remember the email, we will send you an email at the end of the reunion with all these details, so you can send an email if you're interested. The other thing is we are developing all these engagement ways or ways in which you can give. So I will give you a few examples. As Nahid said, he mentioned this project that the students develop, this app to learn languages. This was developed through the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse was an initiative created by one of our students 2 years ago. But last year, we received a donation from one of our alumni who is an entrepreneur who gave us $1 million to invest in this project over the period of 10 years. So it's great, really, yes. Because he understood the value of being an entrepreneur. And it's really amazing, his story. He started his first business while he was here at the college. He developed a website for one of the companies in Landwit. Foucault. Okay, I didn't know the name. But it's really extraordinary. So he wanted other students to experience that. He gave us the money. And this is an innovation hub. But you can also be involved in that. We have been inviting alumni to choose the projects that will get the funding. So we have a panel. They organize hackathons. They need to pitch the projects, and then as alumni, they come and help us to choose the projects that we will give them money so they can try them in the real world. Yeah, so we have been doing that for the past 2 years, and it's working really well, as you saw with this app. Another example of how you can get involved, giving your time, is helping us to share your knowledge and being giving a lecture. We created the In Conversation lectures. I don't know if you join us, it's online. We have had many, many alumni taking part in that, and it has been working really, really well to connect the community, especially during the past 2 years. It was really good. We recently did also an event at the Royal Society in London where we invited alumni to also talk about the topic of deliberate diversity. And it was really a very good event, and we had alumni from different sectors and with different expertise sharing their experiences about diversity. So I just put this picture about the pool that we just recently renovated, and I wanted to highlight another way of contributing to the community is being a class rep. So thank you so much for the class reps that are here, for all your hard work. Thank you so much, really. That group, those class reps, they help us to raise money to restore the outdoor pool and the indoor pools recently when we launched the project for the seafront. So thank you to all those working on that. So there are many, many other ways in which you can contribute, give your time, your expertise. And the other way to contribute is obviously financially. It's really, really important. And I'm very pleased to say here that philanthropy has been at the core of this college since its inception, when Anthony Bisset donated this castle to the college so it could start. So it has been through all these 60 years at the core of this college. And thanks to all the support that we received so far from alumni, parents, private foundations, and other people, we have been giving all these scholarships that Nahid mentioned. But this is the project that Nahid mentioned recently. This is the education innovation. This is just to develop the first prototype. And we need £700,000 for that, an investment. It's the first stage to develop this new education model. But it has the power to impact globally education. So we're really excited about this project. The other project that we have in our priority, as Nahid mentioned, we really want to give 60% of our students a full scholarship in the next 10 years. So together, yeah. Together, we need to raise 6.3 million per year. At the moment, we're raising 3.7, and this is absolutely a priority for my team and the college. So we're focused on that. So if you want to contribute and give back, if you have the opportunity to come here with a scholarship, we want to hear from you. You can talk to me, you can send an email. We will send all the links as well of how you can donate if you want to make a donation. It doesn't have to be a full scholarship. Every single donation counts. If you become a regular donor, and we're launching a campaign actually called 60 for 60, this year is our 60th anniversary. We want to see at least 60 members of each class giving on a regular basis. That's very easy. It's very doable. So please join that campaign. That will get us to the 6.3 million. Yeah. The other thing is, another priority is, Nahid and Ria mentioned, is the restoration of Powys. This is one of the houses that we have, and this is the house that will allow us to get to the 380 students per year. We want to bring this house to the current, I would say regulation, the current regulation, to be really sustainable. So we're thinking about solar panels. We're going to put, heating that is it's a heat pump. There are many sustainable features that the house will have. And to be doing that, we need 1.2 million to renovate the whole house and get to the 380 students that we need. And the other project that we have as a priority as well within the next 5 years is this education hub. So restoring the old education buildings, connect them to really support the new education model. And that is a project that will have a cost of £8 million. Yeah. And finally, Castle. The last one, but not the least important, as Nahid said, is really at the core of the experience. And this is a longer-term project. It will take 10 years to do the restoration, but we will need, £12 million to do the whole work that we have to do to restore all these roofs that Nahid mentioned. So we're starting with the first project of restoration will be the portcullis, and the 2 roofs adjacent to that portcullis, and that is a project that will have a cost of 1.7 million. So I just wanted also to mention and remind us that we have a lot to celebrate. This college has achieved so much in 60 years, and we're really, really excited to launch the Years of Celebrations this October. The 1st of October, we'll have an event here to launch the Years of Celebrations. And we want to really think about all our past, what we have achieved, and what we can build in the future. You have the power to help us transform this college and build the basis for the next 60 years. So that's really, really important. Without your support, we are not going to achieve all these ambitious plans that we have. So I think this year is super important. It will be a launch pad for us, for all these ambitions that we have. And these are the key pillars of the Year of Celebrations. There will be many other celebrations, but if you are interested in helping us to host an event, let us know. We'll be happy to celebrate in different countries and do different things. So there will be this event in October at the Castle. Then we will have a project week, the student project week, where you can participate, get involved, help us to mentor students. Then we will have an event in London again. This is the Courtham Circle Forum, and we will discuss about peace in the sense, as Nahid mentioned, peace as social justice, how we can change the systems to achieve that kind of peace. That will be at the Royal Society, And then we will celebrate the UWC Day in September 23. And then we will finish the year with a royal band with our patron. So we have been talking to the Office of the Prince of Wales to engage in an event to close the year of celebrations. So we're hoping that you can join us. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please talk to me and any member of our staff. I hope you're enjoying the weekend. And thank you again. I will ask Nahid now to give a final words. Thank you.
So as you can see, I have the good fortune to work with a tremendous leadership team, right? What we have. So without sounding cliche, you are needed, okay? All of us, in some way, have been standing on the shoulder of giants. Those we celebrated earlier in the year when we were in London on the classes of the 60s, the 70s recently, the 80s recently, we all are standing on their shoulders. And the time will come very soon where the next 60 generations of students will need to stand on your shoulders. And so I would ask that as you think about ways in which you would like to give back to the college, that you consider the experiences that you have had and you consider paying it forward in some way. And as Andrea said, it's not the amount, it's not the volume of time, it's the thought, it's the small contribution, it is the small effort to be able to help to make the lives of someone else better in this college or outside of this college. And so that's what we would ask and encourage you to do. And as a simple example that's come out of some of the other reunions is that many others, classes, for example, have been developing class scholarships to give annually. And when you think about the math on that, it's actually pretty reasonable, right? And so if you imagine, for example, the average class size is about 160 or so graduates. Let's assume that only 70 of them are in contact, okay? So less than half. If you have 70 that you have, all that it takes is on average £500 a year per person, on average. Some can give 2,000, some will give 100. But on average, £500 a year. And that's enough for a scholarship for a student to come here, for a class to raise. And if we have 58 graduating classes right now. Let's imagine 10 of them can't give for whatever reason. So if we had 48 classes that gave, that would automatically push us straight into the 50% category, from 35 straight to 50, just on that alone. Okay? So it is very doable, and not necessarily at huge cost. But it's about what we do best, which I think is mobilize. Right? So actually what it requires is the skill of mobilization rather than the skill of having a deep pocket. Right? So there are ways in which we can do that. So I want to thank you for coming here and for all that you have given. And I really hope that you reconnect and that you have a chance to really enjoy one another's company. And just really happy to open it up to any questions or comments that you may have. There's a microphone there that we can use. Thank you. Thank you. That's really kind of you. Please.
Nobody else wants to ask it. Thank you, Nahid. Mark, AC90. I was delighted, inspired, and I'm enrolled by everything, so thank you. No, I think the ovation gave that. I think I was particularly inspired and delighted by the way you articulated the importance of sustainable development, our planetary challenges. Fundamentally, I think that's the challenge and the difference that UWC can make, so genuinely delighted. I think there's always been the need for a Sustainable Development 101 within the IB, planetary boundaries, biodiversity, all the fundamental psychology of sustainable development. I think the unique thing that I'd kind of encourage and urge us as a group to make more of is what Andrea referred to, which is the intergenerational nature of what I think is a unique alumni group. Yes, 9,000 sounds like a lot, but look at the number of people here. I don't think you'll find anything outside of a family will get that kind of creativity, so that kind of connectivity. And fundamentally, sustainable development, more than anything, is an intergenerational and intragenerational challenge. So my question, and yes, I'd love to help and be involved, but I think, how do we capture that unique thing in a way that's relevant not just for our UWC society, but to show broader global society that we can fix those intragenerational challenges? But thank you, generally, and I said to Guido before, I said, where's sustainable development? He said, wait, and I'm genuinely pleased, thank you.
Thank you for that question. And, for me, it starts with a fundamental belief in the power of education, as our mission speaks to. If we believe that at the core of any kind of systems change is the mental models that we as human beings hold in our mind, the basic assumptions we have about the relationship between human beings and the environment, or between us and our consumption patterns and societies that we live in, or us and the fundamental biases that we may have, our mental models, that the best way in which we can shift a human being's mental models is through education. And so that has to be, for me, the starting point. As we get to the programmatic aspect of it, while what we've talked about is a pilot, we also need to be able to do is to find ways very quickly to develop what we do in the pilot and share it across our wider student body in a sort of a Sustainability 101, which many have also spoken about, and I'm happy that you raised that here. The second question then is, how do we begin to spread and share what we develop with those across UWC and beyond? And for that will require a couple of different mechanisms. And that's part of the plan that we will need to develop as we sort of go forward in the next 2 or 3 years. But one of them, for example, is the ways in which we are engaging right now with the IB. And the IB is in the midst of their own 10-year plan around the IB diploma program and overhauling the IB diploma program. And so the timing of this is really nice, because part of what has piqued their interest is saying, okay, how can a school like ours that has the DNA of innovation in it innovate in such a way that we can gain learnings from, and perhaps in the 5 or 7 year time horizon, a successful innovation coming out of here can be folded back into what is a renewed IB diploma program. And the vehicle through which that can be shared is far greater than we may ever be able to do that on our own. The other is leveraging what we can through technology. And just Guido and us had a nice conversation this morning about this, right? How can we better use technology as a way then, even in small ways, modular ways, be able to share what we have with others? Part of my aspiration as part of this is that our students will become teachers of middle school students around that intersection point in bite-sized, tangible ways that students anywhere in the world can be able to have. Right? And so that's just some of it, but absolutely right on our agenda, and one of the things that needs to be part of how we develop what we develop. Thank you. I think we have one more question. Just, if you have another question, if you don't mind, just you can just line behind the microphone will be the ideal way of sorting the speaker list, if you will. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for all the information you shared and the inspiration that you shared as well. My name's Jamie from the class of 90. I love to see the message you're putting across, that action's at the core of the curriculum going forwards. And I had the pleasure this morning of sitting with a group of people just down by the barracks, or what used to be called the barracks. And we were discussing also the value of, I guess, just simply being as well as inevitably taking action. I'm curious if there is a place in the curriculum that you're putting forward for that more maybe personal reflection, development of that ground for action. Yes. Does that make sense as a question?
I think so. And stay at the microphone, because I'll try to answer it. If I don't, give it back to me. Okay. No so there's a couple of things that come to my mind there that are part of our strategic plan and of absolute importance. So one is the sort of the historic idea of the services that we've had at the college as a form of action, and also I would argue contemplation, reflection, and team building. And so we have had a bit of a dip, you could say, a bit of a low in some ways with regards to our seafront, partially pandemic-based, partially sort of regulatory in nature, and partially, just I think as a college college, us putting a bit more emphasis and priority on it. And so absolutely going forward, that is a core priority of ours to bring back the seafront in as much of a way that we are allowed to do and bring back. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all activities must happen off the slipway. As much of it will, but there are other opportunities for us to engage as well with the waterfront in that kind of way. But also to build a more sustained and challenging outdoor education program, with the seafront being a part of that, but also beyond that with the Brecon Beacons and all kinds of things that we can do there. So that's one domain. The second is around well-being more broadly. And so from a well-being standpoint, for us it is really important that we engage more and more with the science of it and what exists out there. That's really terrific from a research standpoint. So, Australia is an area that is sort of, you could say, leading the way from a well-being science standpoint. The US and Canada are probably the next sort of countries that have systems around this that are built into education in some ways. And so learning from what happens there, but being able to build a broader well-being framework that doesn't just deal with the reactive. Right now we often think about well-being as being a reactive issue. You need to see a psychologist, you need to see the health center or whatever. But that's only a small portion of well-being. Actually, it's about how do you teach things like a better understanding of vitality, of eating well, sleeping well, exercise. How do we build resilience? You can teach that to people. How do you ensure that people have a sense of purpose in what they do? That's both the adults and the students who are present. How do we build a greater sense of community? All of those feed into well-being. And a part of that is reflection, mindfulness, contemplation. So that's part of what we're looking to do. As an example of what we're doing this upcoming year, one of our conferences is a faith-based conference. And for many people in the room and in the world, faith is an important part of that journey. And so spending and dedicating a bit of time towards that this year is an important part for us.
Great.
Have I addressed that?
I'll talk some more about that with you at some point.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Hi, I just again first like to say thank you for obviously all the information which you and the leadership team have been able to share with us. As a very recent alumni of class of 2020, it's wonderful to be able to come back and just see, how many changes are already being made and what the college has planned in obviously the near future and already been able to do in such a short space of time. I think everyone in this room can testify that attending Atlantic College is a very, whilst lovely and interesting experience, it's also a very challenging one, not only in terms of academics, but just in terms socially, emotionally, and because you go through so much growth and you experience so many things here. So I was wondering if you, or maybe the leadership team, would be able to expand a bit more on what mental health and support systems are already currently in place at the college, and what support students do have access to currently, as well as expanding a bit more on what having a full-time psychologist will actually mean for students, particularly, for example, with all of the changes already, the stress of the IB, the stress of the pandemic, plus all of the new changes of the new academic, which the school is hoping to add. Obviously, my cohort has a very infamous quote from the previous principal about the college doubling its psychological support, which for context was going from 1 part-time counsellor to 2 part-time counsellors for the entire school. So if you would be able to actually explain what this will mean for new incoming students, the current students, and what the college is also hoping to continue to build on in and incorporate mental health in this 10-year plan.
Thank you for the question. Indeed, something that is really important, and it's not only at AC, but indeed in most parts of the world, we've seen a very clear empirical uptick in mental health concerns for students all around the world prior to the pandemic, but also exacerbated because of the pandemic. And so for us as a college, it is absolutely critical and important. And for us, it's under that well-being sort of umbrella, which for us, we want to shift a bit of our focus to buffering the reactive side, but also at the same time really working hard at the proactive proactive side of what we can do there. On the to the exact points that you've asked around psychologists, for example, and so what we have found this year from the data that we have is that typically what would happen is at a school you would have a sort of a domain of cases and support that can be provided at the college through counselors and those types of things, and then you'll have a percentage of cases that require more expert intervention in some ways, and typically you do that then through the NHS. What we have found is that through the pandemic, as anybody who lives in the UK and other parts of the world will know, it's caused a tremendous backlog in access to the kinds of professionals that people need and require. And so what a psychologist then will do is to allow us to have students who can be then receive a sort of a slightly different level of skill and intervention for those cases that may require it. And so we'll have to put a structure into place to figure out exactly how we best use the tremendous counseling team that we have, while at the same time then giving access to those who may need a different kind of level of intervention. At the same time, having a strong tutoring system, which acts as sort of a foundation where every student can have access to adult and ideally several adults. And so part of what we're building in is something called a welfare plan, where every student will have a welfare plan developed for them, where they identify who are their key adults that they can go to, especially when they're in times of need or need advice or those kinds of things, and so that we have a better global understanding of each individual student and what their needs may be to support them. So it's an emerging and evolving area for us, but one that we absolutely take very seriously, and just really appreciate you raising that with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Naheed. Deirdre O'Donnell, class of 92. Two quick things. One, firstly, I think I can speak on behalf of our entire year when I say that I think for the first time in a very long time, the college is in good and safe and exciting hands. So thank you very much. The second thing I wanted to ask is very specific. As a Northern Irish student who ended up going home to do A-levels after their IB, much to the fury of my father, who's also an educator, what are this pilot program for the newfangled IB next year, what protections are in place for those students who I assume either volunteer or nominated for that, in terms of protecting them from the university entry point of view? Obviously, historically, there's been a bad understanding of international baccalaureate and scoring systems, particularly in British universities. And you know that high school qualifications are a high-stakes experiment for messing around with people's futures. Is there a protection in place for these pilot students?
Yeah, it's a great question, and definitely something that's top of our mind. And so yes, I would say the biggest risk of the project is access to tertiary education, right? In particular, university access. And so for us, we have been pitching it in concept to a couple of universities in Canada and the US. And generally, so far, they've been very receptive. And basically, the reason that they give, essentially, is that, look, like University of Toronto, for example, will say, you know, we have students that represent 200 different curriculums or qualifications from around the world. We are used to dealing with different kinds of sort of qualifications that come to us, and it's a lot easier when you're a known entity. So we have the benefit of having the UWC name, of course, but also Atlantic itself. And so we have a very strong reputation with many, many educational institutions. And North America is definitely the side that's a bit more flexible from a university admission standpoint. It'll definitely be a bigger challenge in countries like the UK or Germany, for example, to be able to, in the early days, gain easy acceptance for what we may be looking to do. So our first port of call is going to be the US primarily. And there we have the support of people like Shelby Davis, for example. So where he came to visit the college about 6 weeks ago, and we shared this idea with him, and he was very happy for the students who may graduate from this to be able to access his scholarships at US universities, for example, and also an offer to open the door to us to the 100 universities that he has access to. So our hope next year, for example, is to put together in practical terms a list of 20 universities, and hopefully some of the diversity of them, some of the Ivy Leagues, which Shelby Davis has connections to, and some of the liberal arts ones, so a nice kind of range of them. And to be able to have a list of 20 who've said that they will accept students who come out with this sort of qualification. And then as we go through the consultation process with students, it's about saying like, look, here are the 20 schools that I can guarantee they will accept you, assuming that you do well in your other 4 courses and that kind of thing. And if this feels too risky for you, then this is probably not the right thing for you. Or if these schools are the ones you don't want to go to, then this is probably not the right experience for you. So to be really transparent about that. And the reason why we chose 4 as well is just because, if a US university is happy to accept a student with 3 A levels, then having 4 diploma subjects, maybe 3 of them being higher level, it makes the barrier a bit lower in terms of feeling that there's at least some formal, more traditional academic basis for that sort of admission. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Nahid. I want to just also underscore how tremendous the leadership is that we've seen here in this room from you, Jill, Andrea, the whole team. But it's really just the tip of the iceberg of what you've been doing over the last year. You've been building very patiently a coalition first for change inside the college, and that has been the greatest barrier for change for a very long time, resistance to change inside the college. You are building, as you've just hinted at, a tremendous coalition with the IB, who are fully supportive, who recognize that the IB is not fit for purpose right now. It is, as your premise lays out, it is not changing nearly as fast as the world is changing around it. And what I'm so excited about is that this puts AC back at the forefront of innovation in international education. And our school we're standing on the shoulders of giants because our school has shaped the IB. It has created the service concept, it has created TOK. And I think the question that you're putting into this room now is, what is the 21st century version of that? And what I applaud you for is for doing that with the right level of ambition, to change this school, to change the IB, but then to also even go beyond the IB. And so I think there's one point where I think you've sold yourself short. I think you haven't been as bold as you probably should be and as you want to be in challenging us to step up and to support you. And so I'm wondering if you wanted to be more explicit about what are the different ways in which we can provide you. There was a number that was on the screen, £700,000, which given the magnitude of the undertaking is nothing. That's only the first down payment because it only covers part of your vision for changing global education. So I'd love to hear your views, and then there's a question that we should all discuss among ourselves, is how can we come together and support you, support the leadership, the wonderful leadership that we're seeing here. Thank you.
Thank you for those very kind remarks. Yes, indeed, it is ambitious, and the first stage is what was sort of listed there. And I think the ways in which this community can be extremely helpful. One is in ways in which you, for example, have given, which is through your expertise in the areas in which you have developed over time. And there are others who I know who are in the room who may be interested in giving in that same kind of way. So we are looking to put together a sort of small community of people who have expertise in this area, who are able to help us in that way to either develop resources, to be able to open doors or access. So that's sort of one way. The other way is through your broader networks that you may have, through other foundations that are out there that can really help to take us to what would be the next level of this. So if all goes well in the first stage, which I'm confident will, because there'll always be tweaks and changes and iteration, as long as you build that into your thinking and planning, then you'll always arrive with a better product 2 years from now than you had 1 year from now. And so I'm confident that it will be in a place that is really important for our world and for education in the near future. And so having access to being able to then scale that, and one route's the IB, and the other route is, perhaps not with the IB, right? And so to be able to scale that will require a different kind of level of support, financially largely, and also network. But in the immediate term, if there are those who are interested in giving to this particular project, it takes into account things like putting a well-rounded set of colleagues, teachers around the program, around those 20 students to support them in various areas they may have. It's about an internship and some of the funding for internships for each of those 20 students. It's about some of the tech that's required, investment in technology that they're going to need, professional development, all those kinds of things are wrapped up into that. So any support for that would also be greatly valued as well. Thank you. I'm just going to do a quick time check so I can see how much we have here. So we're just at the time now. So I would suggest that maybe we can do probably 2 more questions and then we'll start to wrap up if that's okay.
Gret. Diolch yn fawr iawn, bore da, croeso nôl i Gymru, pawb sydd wedi dod yma. Hello, I'm Eluned. I'm from the year of 92, and I want to welcome everyone back to Wales. And it's lovely to see everyone. And amazing to have this. It really is, you know, I live locally, I live in Southern Down, where loads of people have been doing beach rescue for the past however many decades. And I do feel that this, at last, the sense of starting to engage again here. And talking about giants that were standing on shoulders, I mean, one for me is Colin himself. Last time I was in this room was for his funeral, and I feel a sense of responsibility. For one thing that Colin did was to try and bring this college into Wales and into Welsh life. The influence he's had on setting up a new curriculum in Wales, which is coming into the fore next year, and also to connect with what's going on more broadly with, in particular, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Wales became the first nation, and this is after I came to college, this was only in 2015, the first nation in the world to put the Sustainable Development Goal as a legislative duty across everything we do, including education. And I'm really proud that we played a little part in making culture the fourth pillar in Wales. And there's a question for me around language and culture here, and about where does that fit into the UWC moving forward. And I'd love to see in your presentation at the beginning, a reflection on language. We're starting on the UN Decade of Indigenous Languages, where we're going to lose 6,500 languages. This is shared responsibility, and having been to this college and had an uneasy relationship with being a Welsh-speaking student who at the time couldn't speak much English, as my fellow students would testimony to. But to have had that experience of living an international life in Wales, I'd love to see that international life work its way much more through into society in Wales with the education that Colin has been such a part of creating. So just the thought to take Colin's mantra back to the community where he came from as well.
Yes. And I think what you said is critically important. And so I had the privilege about 4 days ago to have a small chat with Mark Drakeford, the First Minister for Wales. And in that conversation, I said to him that we want to become much more embedded in Welsh society. And we want to begin teaching, again, Welsh at the college, both formally, in terms of ab initio as part of the IB, but also informally, access for all students and staff to be able to receive access to learning the Welsh language. But also to have closer strategic connections with Welsh cultural institutions. I was lucky to be invited to Swansea University about 2 months ago or so, and had the chance to meet the Chancellor there and so on, and we spoke again about how it is that we can become more connected to Welsh universities and how we can engage in that kind of way, which we already are to a certain extent. But for us as a college, I think, you know, being much more embedded in the land that we are based on, and the opportunities that provides both for the people of Wales in our community, but also for our students, is a tremendous opportunity. So just totally agree with you. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr.
Hi, thank you, Principal, and your leadership team. It's really nice to hear your presentation. I'm glad you bring vigor back to AC. I'm class of 2021, so I guess I'm the youngest alumni here. I don't see a lot of my class sitting around here. Possibly they're still asleep because of last night's carnival at pub. Because I'm recently graduated, so I guess I'm still more of taking a student's perspective on the issues you've been talking about. And the one I'm most interested in is about sort of kind of like the educational revolution that you want to take here at AC, especially regarding the IB program. You talk about overhauling the IB, and from my personal experience, with the IB program here at AC, it sort of felt that, how to say this, people generally viewed AC sort of kind of as some random IB school just located in Wales in a castle, and that from like a lot of outsiders' point of view, that it is not that much different from others, which is a shame because it is actually very different. But because now IB programs so popular around the world, you can find an IB school in London, in New York, in China, in Southeast Asia, practically anywhere where you can find people. And this sort of situation makes AC less unique in a sense compared to it used to be back in the 60s and 70s. And somehow sort of the identity of AC has changed from sort of kind of like a unique school with IB and just shifted towards an IB school. And I felt like, and with the growing emphasis being put on IB in recent years, especially with the previous principal, Peter Howe, I felt like sort of kind of like AC have lost its focus on its other missions and objectives, and sort of kind of like become a very test-oriented school and a grade-oriented school. And the outcome is, I felt like it certainly has some toll on students' mental health situation, especially during COVID. And what I want to hear from you is a lot more details about how you really want to sort of kind of like redesign the IB program in the sense that makes AEC not just unique in the sense that as one of the founders of an international baccalaureate program, but is also one of the pioneers, or maybe the pioneer, in this mission to sort of kind of reinvent IB, not just some sort of kind of like another set of A-level or another set of AP, but sort of kind of like something really unique that while students do focus on academics and do prove themselves in academic fields, academic areas, but they also have a chance in this program to actually, explore themselves, to show their talents, and to, explore all those possibilities. And I believe when I say this, I'm also speaking for my class. We really love this college, and we want to see it excel and shine at the central stage of education. And I believe sort of kind of reinventing IB is sort of kind of like major steps towards that, because
Great.
After all, it is at the core of this college, and without making sort of kind of IB great again in that sense, we can really sort of kind of like leading AC in the right direction.
Yes, yeah.
For the next 10 years. And I really want to hear more details from you about how you really plan to achieve that.
Great. So thank you for the question. That's really really helpful. And I guess just in short, the new educational pathway is probably the most significant way. And I guess I don't want to give the misperception that somehow I or we are going to sort of overhaul the IB. That, you know what I mean? I just, to keep it sort of in context, we want to work with the IB and closer with them, and they also want to themselves innovate, and we want to be strong partners in that. And thinking about ways in which we can address the IB so that it becomes something that is more meaningful, perhaps, to the majority of students in itself who are here now. At the same time, having this new educational pathway that will act as a springboard for us to be able to do more around it. But maybe perhaps you and I can chat afterwards. I can tell you a bit more about some of my thinking and give you a bit more detail, just from a time standpoint, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Okay, so just as we wrap up, just a couple of housekeeping notes, if that's okay. So first, I just wanted to say that I hope you have a chance to enjoy the beautiful new swimming pool that we have. There are times when you can use it, so from 2 to 4 o'clock today, and then for kids there's a time from 6 to 7, or adults later on today, and then tomorrow it is open again from 8 to 11 a.m. So those are the times when you can use the pool. I would ask, and that's when we have a lifeguard, right? So if you want to use it, please use it then. Please don't use it at other times when there isn't a lifeguard around, especially if you are inebriated, because that would not be so nice. Thank you. Second, just a reminder that or very full. That's probably another reason not to use the pool when you're very full. Second is just a reminder that we are a no smoking campus. So if you'd like to smoke, you need to go off of campus. So either you can go to the seafront side, please take care of your cigarette butts, or you can go to outside the campus on the main exit if you would like as well to smoke. Just a reminder that because we do need to have the campus transitioned for Monday, where we have campers coming in and all that kind of stuff, that by 2 o'clock tomorrow, if you are kindly able to help to make your way out, that would be wonderful at that time. Trying to say it in a nice way, but it's kind of hard, The party ends at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Okay. we have a brunch tomorrow at 11 o'clock in here, and it's for anybody who has in some way given their time, talent, or treasure to either Atlantic or the UWC movement more broadly. Please join us for a brunch in here at 11 o'clock, smoked salmon. And finally, for the first time in 3 reunions, we are actually going to have our barbecue. It's been raining the other 2 weekends, so on the seafront, starting now, is the barbecue, or there's also lunch in the dining hall. Thank you so much, everyone.